My billionaire father told me to choose one of 3 fiancées to marry. Without a second thought, I said, I won't choose any of them. My parents were stunned. Why? Because a sharp pain pierced my heart. I had already married all 3 of them in my past life. In my past life, to save our company from bankruptcy, my parents had me choose a bride from one of 3 powerful families for a strategic marriage. The first time, I chose Fiona, my heart filled with joy, believing I would be happy for the rest of my life. But after we were married, she was gone 364 days a year. She not only made me the laughingstock of our social circle, but also died in a multi-car pileup while protecting a man named Julian. I was a young widower for 3 years before my family arranged for me to marry Grace. But she didn't take the marriage seriously either, treating me as if I were invisible. In our second year of marriage, she died in a fire, sacrificing her life to save Julian. I earned the moniker of a black widower and, at 30, married Bella. This time, we were cordial and respectful, living a stable life into our old age. But as Bella lay on her deathbed, she gripped my hand and left me with a final wish. Ethan, if there's a next life, please don't choose me for the marriage alliance. I only want to be with Julian. It was only then that I realized they had all been in love with Julian. That's why their final words were identical, a plea not to be married to me. And Julian was just the son of our family's housekeeper, plain-looking with no particular talents, who only knew how to play the victim. I didn't know where I had gone wrong, or why they loved him so much that they would willingly enter a loveless marriage with me just to protect him from their family's wrath. I spent a lifetime witnessing their undying love for Julian, and it took that lifetime for me to understand one thing. I, Ethan Sinclair, am not a supporting character in anyone's story. If they don't want me, I don't want them. So this time, I chose none of them. Instead, I gave my parents a different answer. If this marriage alliance has to happen, I want to marry Chloe Sterling. Hearing her name, my parents looked at me in disbelief. Chloe Sterling? The illegitimate daughter of the Sterling family from Chicago? Why on earth would you suddenly want to marry her? Because in my past life, Chloe Sterling eventually topped the Forbes list as the richest person in the world, a titan of industry with unparalleled power. Since this marriage is for the family's sake, I'm going to maximize its benefits. Chloe Sterling is undoubtedly the most advantageous choice. As for love, I've given up on it. So, despite my parents' objections, I racked my brain and came up with countless reasons to convince them. Chicago's economy is booming, and the Sterling Group is the top family there. Haven't you always wanted to expand into the Chicago market but couldn't because we have no foothold? Marrying her is the perfect opportunity. You've said it yourselves, Chloe Sterling, despite being a woman, is fiercely ambitious with a sharp, ruthless business sense. You said she's destined for greatness. After hearing my analysis, my parents were convinced. After weighing the pros and cons, they decided to respect my wishes. They contacted the Sterling family and finalized the arrangement. Ethan, our families have agreed. The wedding is set for 2 weeks from now. Hearing this, my heart finally settled. Time was tight, so my parents rushed off to prepare the wedding gifts, leaving me alone on the sofa with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. A few moments later, I heard footsteps at the door. Fiona, Grace, and Bella walked in, their eyes all fixed on me. Ethan, who did you choose for the marriage? Hearing them ask in unison and seeing the tense, grave expressions on their faces, I hesitated for a moment. The 4 of us grew up together, we were practically inseparable. The 3 of them always treated me like a little prince, coddling and protecting me. They gave me whatever I wanted, took turns cheering me up when I was sad, and were the first to defend me if anyone picked on me. But now I see that all that affection was just them treating me like a little brother. In my last life, I thought they were rushing to ask because they were excited. Now I understand they were terrified of being chosen, which explains their expressions. At that thought, a bitter feeling welled up inside me, and my chest felt so tight I could barely breathe. After a long silence, I finally composed myself and answered them in a hoarse voice. In 2 weeks, you'll know who I've chosen. Seeing that I wouldn't give them a straight answer, they grew impatient and pressed for more. But before they could say anything, my phone rang. Sir, Julian was in an accident. He's seriously injured and they're trying to save him at the hospital now. But there are no rooms available. Can you please help? Please save my son. Hearing the tearful voice of Mr. Jennings, the housekeeper, Fiona snatched the phone from my hand, her voice filled with panic. Which hospital? After a few seconds of silence, Mr. Jennings choked out the name of the hospital. Fiona hung up, said one thing over her shoulder, and left. Ethan, don't worry about the hospital. I'll handle a small thing like this. Seeing this, Grace and Bella immediately followed her without a moment's hesitation. That hospital is owned by my family. I'll talk to the director. Ethan, you just stay here and rest. I know some top specialists. I'll get in touch with them. Ethan, don't you worry about a thing. They all claimed they were doing it for my sake, but it was just an excuse to rush to Julian's side. Their affection for him was so obvious. How did I never see it in my past life? Watching their retreating figures, I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Dejected, I turned and went back to my room, where I gathered up everything that had to do with them. By the time I was done, night had fallen. I opened my phone and saw a Facebook post from Julian. Another day of being spoiled by the three lovely ladies. The picture was a selfie of him in a VIP hospital room. He was sipping a nutritious soup that was Bella's specialty. Fiona's watch was on the table, and Grace's jacket was draped over a chair. I liked the post, then stared for a long time at the 3 boxes I had just set aside. Inside were the gifts their parents had given me for my 18th birthday, the heirlooms of their respective families. Whichever gift I chose to keep would signify which family the Sinclairs had chosen for the alliance. Now that my marriage was settled, it was time to give them their answer. I scheduled a courier and handed the 3 boxes over. Please deliver these to their respective addresses in 2 weeks. After the packages were sent, I threw everything else I had gathered into the trash. The luxury cars, the collectibles, the gifts from Fiona, Grace, and Bella, the videos and photos we took together over the years, the dresses I personally designed for them. Every memory connected to them was now in the past, buried for good. This time, I would not make the same mistakes again. I focused on the wedding preparations, ignoring everything else. A few days later, I came home to find Fiona, Grace, and Bella fussing over Julian. One was adjusting the thermostat, another was carefully cooling a spoonful of medicine, and the third was draping a blanket over his shoulders, doting on him. A self-mocking glint appeared in my eyes. Their love for him was so blatant. How could I have been so blind in my past life? In that moment, a wave of complex emotions washed over me, bitter and suffocating. As I stood there, lost in thought, Julian spotted me and shot up like a startled deer, his face a mask of fearful reverence. Sir, you're back. I'll go draw you a bath and prepare dinner immediately. Please, just a moment. He started to get up, but Fiona pushed him back down. Julian hasn't fully recovered yet, and we have other staff in the house. Ethan, you can have someone else do these little things. Grace and Bella chimed in as well. Considering how badly he was hurt, Ethan, just let him rest. If you're really short-staffed, we can send some of our people over to help. Just stop ordering Julian around. I hadn't said a single word since I walked in, yet I was already being accused of all this. I let out a soft sigh, my eyes narrowing slightly. I'm well aware he's the housekeeper's son, not my personal servant. I've never forced him to do anything. Since you're all so concerned about him, why don't you just take him to one of your homes? That way you can look after him all day and you won't have to worry. Julian's eyes widened as he dropped to his knees, bowing his head to the floor repeatedly in front of me. Sir, I was wrong. I shouldn't have slacked off just because I was sick. Please don't make my father and me leave. I'll go do my chores right now, right away. His forehead was red from the impact, as if he'd suffered some terrible injustice. Seeing his pitiful state, the expressions on Fiona, Grace, and Bella's faces hardened. They rushed to help him up, shielding him behind them as they all turned to face me, their voices laced with anger. Julian didn't do anything wrong. Why are you trying to kick him out for no reason? He's injured and still thinking about serving you. Not only do you not care about his health, you're trying to force him out. Have you no compassion? Now you've made his injuries worse. In the future, he'll be too scared to admit when he's unwell. Are you trying to push him to his breaking point? Will you be happy if something terrible happens to him? Seeing them instinctively jump to his defense, my expression grew cold. I didn't do anything but suggest you could take him with you. But even if I had, am I so arrogant and cruel in your eyes that any grievance he suffers is automatically my fault? My questions hung in the air, and the living room fell silent. Seeing their stunned silence, a profound sense of helplessness washed over me. I had no desire to say anything more. I went to my room alone. Just as I was starting to calm down, there was a knock on my door. It was Julian, holding a cup of coffee, an apologetic look on his face. I'm sorry, sir. Please don't be angry with the ladies. They were just worried about me, that's why they spoke so hastily. It's my fault you fought. If you're going to blame anyone, blame me. Having lived through my past life, I knew he was just playing the victim to stir up trouble, so I didn't take the bait. Leave the coffee and get out of my room. Hearing my cold tone, Julian looked even more hurt, but he didn't dare say anything else. He then accidentally spilled the coffee. The scalding liquid splashed onto my skin, turning it red and instantly raising blisters. I grunted in pain and shoved him away as he approached with a napkin. Julian used the push to stumble backward dramatically, hitting his head on the corner of a desk. A bloody gash opened on his forehead. His cry of pain echoed through the entire mansion. Before I could even process what had happened, Fiona, Grace, and Bella burst through the door. They saw Julian on the floor, his head bleeding, and they panicked. Grace shoved me out of the way. Fiona rushed to his side to help him up, while Bella pressed a hand to the bleeding wound. They rushed out with Julian, not one of them sparing a glance for me, who had been knocked into a glass display case. The glass shattered, shards flying everywhere, slicing my skin and leaving bloody cuts. Blood soaked through my clothes. The pain was so intense my face contorted and my body trembled uncontrollably. As I watched their figures disappear down the hall, an unbearable ache filled my heart, leaving only one thought. I had to get out of their world and never cross paths with them again. I endured the pain, went to the hospital to get my cuts treated, and was on my way to the pharmacy with a prescription. That's when I saw some familiar figures in the room next door. Fiona, Grace, and Bella were standing guard outside Julian's room, their faces etched with unconcealed worry. I told you Julian was too gentle. Staying at the Sinclairs, he'd only be subjected to endless bullying. Once the marriage is settled, we have to find a way to get him out of there. I can't bear to see him get hurt again. Our parents know now that Julian is the one we truly love. We have to ensure his safety. So, no matter which one of us Ethan chooses, she has to go through with the wedding without complaint. It's the only way to keep our families from going after Julian. I watched them silently, a sharp pain seizing my heart. So that was why they agreed to marry me in my past life, even though they didn't love me. They thought they were sacrificing their own happiness to protect their beloved, but they destroyed my life in the process. I lowered my head and started to laugh, a bitter laugh that brought tears to my eyes. They could rest easy. This time, none of them would have to make that sacrifice. I composed myself and turned to leave, but just then, my phone rang. The sudden ring startled the three women inside the room. They came out of the room and looked surprised to see me. "What are you doing here? Are you here to apologize to Julian? How long have you been standing there? Did you overhear us? You're covered in cuts. What happened?" I answered their questions one by one. "I got these cuts when you shoved me into the display case to get to Julian. I'm here to get them treated, not to apologize to him. He's the one who threw hot coffee on me. That's why I pushed him. Running into you was just a coincidence." Hearing my side of the story, the three of them froze for a moment, their expressions growing complicated. Recalling how they had burst into the room, Grace was the first to speak, her patience wearing thin. "Julian didn't mean to spill the coffee. He was injured and his hand wasn't steady. Don't hold it against him. When we came in and saw all that blood, we thought he was dying. We overreacted. I'm sorry." Fiona had also calmed down. "We weren't trying to blame you earlier. We just felt sorry for Julian, so we spoke up for him. Yes, we all grew up together. In our hearts, you'll always be the most important one to us. Have you made a decision about the marriage?" As soon as Bella finished, all three of them turned to me, their faces tense with anticipation. Seeing their expressions, and remembering what I just overheard, I found the whole situation deeply ironic. "I've made my decision. The three of you." Before I could finish, the heart monitor in the hospital room began to beep erratically. All three of their hearts skipped a beat. They spun around and rushed back into the room. Nurses and doctors came rushing in. "The patient's repeated injuries have caused further kidney damage. We didn't catch it, and the medication we administered has induced renal failure. His condition is critical." Hearing the diagnosis, Fiona's eyes immediately welled up. "What the hell are you doing? How could you administer the wrong medication? Julian is so young. If you ruin the rest of his life because of your incompetence, can you live with that?" Grace grabbed the attending physician by the collar, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm giving you 30 minutes to come up with a plan that will cure him, guaranteed. If anything happens to Julian, I will make you all pay." Bella was frantically making calls, contacting every specialist she could think of. "Dr. Evans, you're the top nephrologist in the country. I need you to help me save someone very important. Where are you? I'll send a car for you immediately." The room was in chaos. Everyone was frantic about Julian's condition. The hospital quickly assembled a team of specialists who devised a treatment plan. "The only option is a transplant, but finding a suitable donor could take time, and the longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes." Without a moment's hesitation, All 3 women went to get tested to see if they were a match. The results came back quickly. Fiona was a match. When the doctor handed her the consent forms, she signed them without a second thought and walked into the operating room. The minutes ticked by. Just as everyone was on edge, another problem arose. A nurse rushed out, her voice frantic. The blood bank is running low. The patient needs a massive transfusion now. Hearing this, Grace and Bella, who were waiting outside, immediately rolled up their sleeves. We have the same blood type as Julian. We can donate, but he's hemorrhaging. The 2 of you won't be enough. We need more donors, or it will be too late. We'll be enough. As long as it saves Julian, take as much as you need. The nurse couldn't argue with them and led them to the transfusion room. The red light above the operating room door flashed relentlessly, making my eyes swim. I had witnessed the entire thing, from Julian's collapse to their desperate donations, and my mind was completely blank. In my past life, I wasn't there when Fiona and Grace died for Julian. I only heard the details later. Back then, lost in my own grief, I could never understand why they would give up their lives to save him. But after seeing this, I finally understood. They simply loved Julian. They loved him enough to sacrifice anything for him. Marriage, life, it didn't matter. They would throw it all away for him without a second thought. That's why I could never win against Julian. Thankfully, in this life, I had already decided to let go. I wouldn't be tangled up in their love triangle anymore. The light above the operating room door went off, and the surgeon emerged, wiping sweat from his brow. Are you with them? The surgery was a success. The patient should be waking up soon. The donor will need to be monitored in the ICU for a while. The other 2 in the transfusion room passed out from blood loss. Can you manage looking after all 4 of them? I shook my head, my lips dry. I'm not related to any of them, but I can contact their families. They'll be here shortly. After that, I sent messages to the families of Fiona, Grace, and Bella, as well as to Mr. Jennings, letting them know what had happened. As I turned to leave, I overheard a few nurses whispering, "Not related? I thought for sure he was married to one of those 3 beautiful women. No way he's the husband. Would you stand for it if your wife was ready to die for another man? I bet all 3 of them are in love with that guy. Why else would they all be fighting to save him?" I listened quietly, a silent smile forming on my lips. I agreed with them in my heart. Yes, it was always Julian they loved, and I would never be their husband again. I dragged my aching body home to find my parents waiting for me in the living room. They frowned when they saw my injuries. Not wanting them to worry, I quickly made up an excuse. They relaxed after I assured them I'd be fine, and then they handed me a box. This is from the Sterling family, their token for the marriage alliance. Keep it safe. Chloe has received ours as well. Just now, the heads of the other families called asking about the marriage. They mentioned Julian, saying the girls were just being kind and that you're still the one they want. We didn't know what to say. You need to handle this yourself. You're a grown man now, you can make your own decisions. Your father and I will stay out of it. I didn't want them to worry, so I promised I would take care of it. Over the next 2 days, I had someone compile a dossier on the Sterling family and on Chloe specifically. Once I had a general idea, I went to the mall and bought gifts for her family based on their tastes. I came home after a day of shopping, my car filled with gifts, to find Fiona, Grace, and Bella waiting for me at the door. They had also brought gifts, so many that they nearly filled the living room. Seeing my confusion, the 3 of them exchanged a glance before explaining. Our families prepared these. They sent us to apologize in person. You saw what happened the other day. Julian's life was on the line, and he was only hurt again because of you. We were emotional and you got hurt in the process. Ethan, if you're angry, take it out on us. Don't involve our parents and don't blame Julian. He's the victim here after all. I realized then that their families had forced them to come apologize and to plead Julian's case while they were at it. I was in no mood to argue, so I responded politely. Take the gifts back. I don't need them, and I'm not going to bother Julian over something so pointless. I'm tired. I want to rest. As I spoke, I rubbed my tired eyes and took out my phone. As I did, the box with the Sterling family's token fell out of my bag, landing at Fiona's feet. She bent down and picked it up. What's this? Grace and Bella looked over, and the moment they saw the box, their faces changed. A marriage token? Ethan, have you already chosen someone? I looked up and saw them about to open it, so I quickly snatched it back. My sharp reaction stunned them, and their eyes were fixed on me. Who did you choose? Was it Grace? Or Bella? Or... Fiona couldn't bring herself to say the last word. Me. I knew she was afraid that I had actually chosen her. I forced a smile and met their gazes. What if I have? What if I haven't? You don't need to be so tense. It has nothing to do with you. Grace grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. What do you mean it has nothing to do with us? If you're getting married, it has to be one of us. Our families are the only ones with a suitable candidate. Bella crowded in as well, her eyes fixed on me. We know you couldn't decide, and we never pressured you. But if you've made a choice, just tell us. We want to end this torment. So this is what it felt like for them? The prospect of marrying someone they didn't love was torture? I took a deep breath, opened the box, and showed them the brilliant diamond watch inside, the token from the Sterling family. This is my answer. Are you satisfied? Only then did the three of them notice the trunk full of shopping bags and seem to understand. So it's not one of our family tokens, just a new watch you bought today? How much was it? We'll pay for it. Consider it our apology. I looked at the sparkling watch in my hand and said nothing. Fiona, thinking I just liked the watch, took it and put it on my wrist for me. Grace nodded in approval, giving me a thumbs up. Bella took out her phone and snapped a few pictures, saying she wanted to remember the moment. For the first time since my rebirth, I saw genuine smiles on their faces. They were happy because they thought I still hadn't made my choice. They were relieved. For a moment, I found the situation both absurd and laughable. I was about to say something, but I was interrupted by Julian, who had appeared out of nowhere. His eyes lit up as he looked at all the gifts piled in the living room. Why are there so many gifts here all of a sudden? Are they for you, sir? The three women saw him, and their gazes were instantly glued to him. Seeing the smiles they couldn't contain, I spoke calmly. They're for me, but I don't want them. If you like them, they're yours. With that, I walked back to my room, ignoring them completely. Julian looked at me in disbelief, pointing to himself. Me? Sir, you can't be serious. How could I ever be worthy of gifts from the young ladies? The three women heard the sadness in his voice and felt a pang of sympathy. They quickly guided him over to the pile of gifts. If Ethan said they're for you, then they're yours. These clothes, collectibles, gaming consoles, they're all the latest models. You'd look great in them. Of course you're worthy. Things are meant to be used. Julian, don't sell yourself short. You deserve the best things in the world. Go on, open them. We'll help you pick out what you like. The sound of the three of them cooing over Julian faded as I closed my bedroom door. The cold metal of the watch on my wrist felt foreign, but I figured I would get used to it eventually. I woke up feeling dizzy, like I was coming down with a fever. I don't know how they found out, but Fiona, Grace, and Bella rushed over soon after. I was sick for 3 days, and they visited every single day, practically moving in. But they spent very little time with me. Most of the time, they were downstairs with Julian, teaching him to play chess, helping him in the garden, taking photos of him, and drawing his portrait. I saw it all, but I didn't say a word. Occasionally, they would come up to check on me and notice that things were missing from my room. Ethan, what happened to that pearl phone charm I gave you a few years ago? You used to love that gemstone bracelet I gave you. You insisted on keeping it where everyone could see it. Why isn't it there anymore? And the photo of us from your 18th birthday? Where did you put it? I brushed off their questions with a few casual excuses. They seemed suspicious, but they didn't press the issue. By the time my birthday arrived, I had mostly recovered. Before the party, my parents came to my room to have a word with me. Everyone important will be here tonight, including all three families. Your father, and I think it's the perfect time to announce your engagement. What do you think? I was about to agree when I heard the sound of a glass shattering behind me. I turned to see Julian standing frozen, his face pale. Sir, you're getting married? I just nodded. I didn't explain. Everyone would find out soon enough. At 7 o'clock that evening, the party began. The moment Fiona, Grace, and Bella entered, all dressed in stunning evening gowns, they captured the attention of the entire room. I'm so jealous of Ethan. He has 3 gorgeous childhood friends to choose from. When will I ever be that lucky? What's the use of being jealous? This was practically arranged from birth. No matter who he chooses, it's a perfect match between powerful families. Isn't Ethan about that age? You think he'll announce his choice tonight? I'm dying to know who it will be. I listened to their chatter, my expression calm. But the 3 women, who had also heard the whispers, grew flustered and hurried to my side. Ethan, you're announcing it tonight? Why didn't you tell us? It's my decision. It has nothing to do with you. Why would I need to? I replied calmly. Their voices were tinged with anger. How can you say it has nothing to do with us? Is your bride going to be someone else? Stop playing games and just tell us who you picked. Just then, my parents walked onto the stage, nodded to the crowd, and took the microphone. thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to celebrate our son's birthday. On behalf of the Sinclair family, I thank you. In addition to celebrating his birthday, we have another happy announcement to make tonight regarding my son Ethan's engagement. The announcement sent a buzz through the hall, followed by a wave of applause and cheers. The most excited of all were the patriarchs of the other three families. They stood and beckoned for Bella, Grace, and Fiona to join them. Seeing this, the three women's hearts began to pound, their faces turning grim. But they knew they had to maintain appearances, so they forced smiles and reluctantly went to their families. My parents gave me a look and I understood. I walked up to join them on stage. Just as I took my place, the sound of static crackled from the speakers. I turned, along with everyone else, to see a familiar face on the large screen behind the stage. It was Julian sobbing hysterically. Fiona, Grace, Bella. I know I'm just the housekeeper's son. I don't have Ethan's looks or his family background. I accepted my place in the world a long time ago and never asked for more. But then you came into my life and told me you cared for me, and you gave me hope. I'll never forget how you left Ethan alone at the campsite and drove all night just to comfort me after a bad dream. I'll never forget how you pretended to go on a business trip just so you could take me to see the Northern Lights for my birthday. And I'll never, ever forget that you saved my life, giving a kidney, giving your blood until you collapsed. By the time you see this, I'll be on the roof of the Sinclair Tower. I know one of you has to marry him, but the thought of you becoming his wife, of having to cut me out of your lives forever, it's like a knife in my heart. I know you're being forced into this. I know you're only doing it to protect me from your families. I can't let you sacrifice your happiness for me. So today I've decided to end my life. Once I'm gone, you'll be free. You can be with the ones you truly love. The 5-minute video ended abruptly, plunging the entire hall into a stunned, deathly silence. Everyone stared, wide-eyed and incredulous, at Fiona, Grace, and Bella. Everyone except me. My mind went blank for a second when the video started, but then I remembered Julian's behavior before I left the house, and I wasn't surprised. I looked down at the three women, who looked as if they'd been struck by lightning, and at their parents, who looked ready to faint from rage, and I let out an imperceptible sigh. The people who would take this the hardest were surely the family patriarchs, men who had watched me grow up. My parents, on the other hand, already knew I wasn't marrying any of them. After the initial shock, they would probably feel relieved. As for the other families who had been kept in the dark and were still hoping for a union, after learning what their daughters had done for Julian, they would likely never speak of this marriage alliance again. And I was right. The family heads recovered and immediately called for security to restrain Fiona, Grace, and Bella, who were trying to run out of the hall. Humiliated in front of everyone, they were furious, slamming their fists on the tables. It's Ethan's birthday. You should be here with him, not running off to find that housekeeper's son. I'm telling you, as long as we're alive, you will never have anything to do with him again. The moment they heard Julian was threatening suicide, all three of them lost their minds. All they could think about was his safety. They wanted to fly to his side and save him. They ignored the mocking whispers of the crowd, the fury of their parents, and the wall of security guards blocking their path. Is a birthday party more important than a person's life? If you don't let us go, and something happens to Julian, we will never marry Ethan Sinclair. With that threat, they grabbed wine bottles and smashed them on the floor in front of the guards. The hall erupted into chaos, filled with screams. As I stood on the stage and watched them fight their way out and leave without a backward glance, a bitter, self-mocking smile touched my lips. Even in this new life, they still gave up everything for Julian. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but aside from a suffocating bitterness, I no longer felt any pain. The guests, seeing the three of them flee, all turned their attention to me. All three of them are in love with the housekeeper's son? My God, Ethan Sinclair must be absolutely humiliated. How pathetic. It's his birthday, his potential brides just ran out on him, and his party is ruined. I'm surprised he hasn't had a breakdown. Despite their whispers, my expression remained calm. I gently patted my parents, who were still in shock, took the microphone and spoke. There was an unexpected disturbance, and on behalf of my parents, I apologize for alarming you all. I would also like to take this opportunity to announce that my wedding will take place in 2 days. I will be marrying Ms. Chloe Sterling of Chicago. You are all welcome to attend. Those few sentences once again silenced the entire room. I didn't care about their reactions. I helped my parents off the stage and we left the hotel. The car ride was silent. The only sound was our breathing. Just before we arrived home, my parents sighed heavily and looked at me with loving concern. Ethan, did you know they were in love with Julian? Is that why you insisted on marrying the Sterling's illegitimate daughter instead? Yes, you can't force love. Chloe and I don't have a deep connection, but she's dedicated to her career. She won't be unfaithful. We may not have a passionate love affair, but we can have a respectful partnership. For me, that's enough. My parents seemed surprised by my confidence. You trust Chloe that much? I nodded, reassuring them gently. Yes, because I've had her looked into, but I didn't tell them the real reason. In my past life, Chloe Sterling never married. She was never linked to anyone romantically. Until the day she died, she was known as the formidable ice queen of the business world. That's why I'm certain this is the right move. After that disastrous birthday party, I went home and started packing. The wedding was to be held in Chicago. The day before the wedding, the Sterling family sent several private jets loaded with wedding gifts. I was about to leave for the airport when I got a message. It was from Fiona. She sent an address and said they wanted to talk. I checked the time. My flight wasn't for another few hours, so I agreed to meet them. When I arrived at the private room and opened the door, 3 pairs of somber eyes fell on me. They were silent, and so was I. After 10 minutes, Fiona took a sip of her drink and spoke in a low voice. Ethan, we're sorry about what happened at your party, but a life was on the line. We couldn't just stand by and let Julian die. We had no choice but to hurt you. I replied coolly, it's not the first time you've hurt me. I don't need your apology. My coldness seemed to make them even more agitated. Grace and Bella's voices grew urgent. What's done is done. Being angry won't change anything. Our families are furious, but Julian is innocent. He shouldn't be dragged into this. You've always been good with our parents. If you just talk to them, they'll calm down. If you can just convince them not to go after Julian, then whoever you choose to marry will promise to love you for the rest of her life. How about it? So that's what this was about, protecting Julian again. I just felt tired. There's no need. After you left yesterday, I already announced. Before I could finish, Fiona cut me off. Announced what? Who did you choose? My gaze moved between the 3 of them, but I didn't give them a direct answer. The marriage tokens from your families, I've already sent them back. They should arrive tomorrow. Hearing this, they assumed I had returned 2 of the 3 tokens and were about to press me on which one I kept when a call came from the hospital. Mr. Jennings' son is awake, and he's trying to get to the roof again. Hearing this, their expressions changed instantly. They grabbed their coats to leave. As they were leaving, I called out to them for the first and last time. Before you go, could you all wish me a happy marriage? For some reason, hearing my words, a strange, unsettling feeling washed over Fiona, Grace, and Bella. They all opened their mouths, wanting to ask why I would ask such a thing, but the words died on their lips. They exchanged a look, and then said in unison, "Happy marriage." Just as they finished, the phone rang again. It was the hospital. They didn't stay a moment longer and rushed out. I didn't try to stop them. I watched their car speed away, then went home, deleted their numbers from my phone, and boarded the helicopter the Sterling family had sent for me. This life, I chose none of them. I chose to start a new life of my own. By the time Fiona, Grace, and Bella rushed to the hospital, Julian had already been coaxed down from the roof. He lay in bed, looking at them with an expression that seemed to accuse them of abandoning him. What took you so long? The moment he spoke, their hearts went out to him, and they immediately surrounded his bed. Don't cry, we're here now, aren't we? Fiona said, gently wiping a tear from his eye, her gaze full of affection. That's right, you're still recovering. You can't get too emotional. Just rest, and we'll stay with you, Grace added, feeling she'd been a second too slow. Yes, we'll all stay with you, Bella chimed in, not wanting to be left out. But you still have to marry Ethan. The thought of it is like a knife in my heart. I don't want you to be forced by your families to marry someone you don't love. A lifetime is too long. After saying this, Julian lowered his head, looking utterly dejected. Where they couldn't see, a cold smirk played on his lips. When he looked up again, his pitiful expression was back in place. Seeing him looking so selfless and concerned for them, their hearts melted, and the strange feeling they'd had when they saw me earlier was completely forgotten. Julian, you know you're the one we care about. Why would you say that? Even if one of us marries Ethan, you will always be the most important person to us. Julian, don't worry. You'll always be our favorite. Julian listened to their reassurances, his heart swelling with triumph. Ethan Sinclair, so what if you're the heir to the Sinclair fortune? I can take everything that's yours. Meanwhile, I watched them leave, paused for a moment, and then headed for the airport. I got to the airport much earlier than I expected. A thought occurred to me and I called home. Dad, it's time to replace Mr. Jennings. It's no longer appropriate for Julian to live with us. You go on ahead. Your mother and I will follow later." After hanging up, it was time for takeoff. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. My parents had already been planning to let Mr. Jennings go. They had hired him out of kindness, knowing it was hard for a single father, and had even let his son live on the property. And this is how he repaid them, by bringing shame upon their house. They immediately notified HR to draw up his termination papers. But when Mr. Jennings received the notice, he stormed into my father's study without even knocking. "Mr. Sinclair, what have I done wrong? Why are you firing me? Mr. Jennings, you are no longer a good fit for this household." Looking at the housekeeper's indignant face, my father felt a wave of irritation. It seemed they had been too lenient with the staff, allowing them to forget their place. "Even if the young ladies like my son, that's only because your son isn't charming enough." Listening to the housekeeper's endless complaints, my father regretted his earlier kindness. He called security to have the man removed and told the staff to throw his belongings out after him. Mr. Jennings was furious about being thrown out. Was it a crime for his son to be charming? The Sinclairs were clearly the ones being unreasonable. He called Julian at the hospital and demanded that he find him a well-paying, easy job. Julian was furious when he heard my father had kicked them out. He had lived there for so long. What right did they have to just throw them out? Julian immediately started crying to the three women. "Fiona, Grace, Bella, what am I going to do? The Sinclairs kicked my father and me out because of what happened at the party. I know Ethan is mad at me, but what did my father do to deserve this?" Hearing this, the three of them immediately tried to call me to demand I reverse the decision. But after several tries, all they got was my voicemail. Their expressions soured. "Julian, don't worry. I won't let your father be homeless. I have a vacant guest house. You and your father can stay there for now." "Julian, I have a place too." Watching the three of them fight over who would house him, Julian was moved beyond words. "Thank goodness I have you all." After arranging a place for Julian and his father, the three women went home. The next morning, just as they were about to visit Julian at the hospital, they each received a package from me containing their family's heirloom. Fiona stared at the emerald bracelet in the box. Ethan hadn't chosen her? Why not her? Didn't Ethan like her? When they were children, he used to follow her around, sweetly calling her Fiona, and saying he would marry her when they grew up. Did he choose Grace or Bella? The same scene was playing out in the other two households. Grace and Bella looked at the heirlooms in their hands, a sense of unease settling over them. What did Fiona have that they didn't? As if by telepathy, they all went to each other's houses, only to find no one home. Finally, they coordinated in their group iMessage and agreed to meet in a private room at their favorite restaurant. When Grace arrived, Fiona was already there. Seeing the returned heirloom in each other's hands, they both assumed I had chosen Bella. A tense silence fell between them. When Bella arrived, she found the other two staring at her. Confused, she held up her own returned heirloom. "This is my family's heirloom." Ethan sent it back. "So, which one of you did he choose?" Seeing the pendant, the other two looked at each other in disbelief and produced their own heirlooms. "Ethan returned mine too." "And mine." A sudden silence fell over the three of them. "If it's not one of us, then who is it?" Bella asked, breaking the silence. "Besides our families, who else is even in his league?" "Maybe Ethan is just throwing a tantrum, waiting for us to come running back to him," Grace suggested, though it was unclear if she was trying to convince them or herself. "Yes, that must be it. That's definitely it." They all chimed in at once, a chaotic mess of agreement. Suddenly, a ringing phone cut through their speculation. Fiona saw it was Julian calling. For some reason, she didn't feel like answering. She let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then the other two got calls from him and they ignored them as well. Then Fiona's phone rang again. "You should probably answer it, just in case," Grace and Bella said in unison. Fiona finally answered, putting the call on speaker. "Julian, what is it?" "Fiona, are Grace and Bella with you? I have you on speaker. They can hear you." As soon as she finished speaking, they heard Julian's excited voice on the other end. "Fiona, Grace, Bella, I'm so touched. I heard you stood up to your families and refused to marry Ethan, all for me." The three women looked at each other, completely bewildered. They may not have liked the idea, but they had never actually refused the marriage. Sensing something was wrong, they cut him off. "Julian, what's going on?" There was a moment of confusion on the other end. "Didn't you all refuse to marry him? Isn't that why Ethan is marrying the illegitimate Sterling girl from Chicago?" "What?" The three of them were stunned. Ethan was marrying someone from the Sterling family? When did this happen? How did they not know? As heiresses to powerful families, they knew all about the Sterlings of Chicago. Chloe Sterling. They had to admit she was brilliant, but she was illegitimate. In their world, legitimate heirs looked down on those born outside of marriage. How could an illegitimate daughter possibly be worthy of Ethan Sinclair? Was Ethan really so desperate to spite them that he would stoop so low? They scrambled for their phones, searching for news. Headlines from gossip sites filled their screens. Sterling heiress climbs the ranks, wins favor of Sinclair heir, solidifying her power. Why did the billionaire scion choose an illegitimate bride? As much as they didn't want to believe it, they couldn't deny the truth. I was marrying someone else. Fiona? Grace? Bella? Are you still there? Julian called their names, having heard nothing but silence. But the three women were too stunned by the news to pay him any mind. Fiona hung up and immediately called her assistant. Book me the next flight to Chicago. Book 3 tickets. We're going to bring Ethan back. He can't just marry some random person to get back at us, Grace declared. When her assistant told her all commercial flights to Chicago were sold out, she immediately used her family's influence to charter a private jet. After the call, the three of them sat in stunned silence. Julian called again, but none of them were in the mood to talk to him. They all silently switched off their phones. Back at the hospital, Julian stared at his phone, his calls not going through. His good mood evaporated. When the message changed to, "The user's phone is off," he was so enraged he threw his phone against the wall. Ethan Sinclair. Ethan Sinclair. He spat my name with pure hatred, his eyes glinting maliciously as he stared at the shattered phone. He had an orderly buy him a new phone, then checked himself out of the hospital to find them. While they waited for the flight to be cleared, they bombarded me with calls and texts. Ethan, don't marry some illegitimate girl just to spite us. Ethan, come back. We can pretend none of this ever happened. Ethan, stop being so childish. Far away in Chicago, I saw their messages and figured they must have received their packages. My mother said to me, Ethan, it's time to go get your bride. I nodded. Mom, Dad, I'm going to have a happy family. I couldn't promise them I would be happy, but I could promise that by leaving those three behind, I wouldn't repeat the failures of my past life. My parents understood what I wasn't saying. In our world, personal feelings often have to take a back seat. They just hoped I could find the same happiness they had. Ethan, your mother and I will always have your back. I smiled at my worried parents, blocked all three of their numbers, and put my phone away. After getting ready, I left with the wedding party. Hearing the message that their calls couldn't be completed, they knew what it meant. I had blocked them. All they could do was hurry the preparations for their flight. Chloe walked towards me, trying to appear calm. I looked up at her and was taken aback by the deep affection in her eyes. Wasn't this just a strategic marriage? Why did she look like all her dreams were coming true? If I weren't so sure I'd never seen her beautiful face before, I'd think I had some past with her that I'd forgotten. As I carried her to the wedding car, Chloe looked like a triumphant general. Her expression was still composed, but anyone could see the joy in her eyes. My parents looked puzzled, too. Chloe wasn't what they had expected. Perhaps my choice had been the right one after all. In the car, neither of us knew what to say, and the atmosphere was a little awkward. We both started to speak at the same time. Seeing how nervous she was, I suddenly relaxed. I smiled. You first. Chloe looked at my thin frame with a hint of concern. Are you hungry? I brought some snacks. It's going to be a long day. I replied politely out of habit. Thank you. Hearing me thank her, Chloe looked a little disappointed. You don't have to be so formal with me. I was starting to get curious about my new wife. She was nothing like the rumors said. I could tell she wasn't opposed to this marriage. At the venue, the officiant began. Groom, do you take this woman to be your wife, to live together in holy matrimony, to love her, comfort her, honor and keep her in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, be faithful to her as long as you both shall live? I looked into Chloe's eyes and said firmly, I do. The fiery passion in her eyes was almost overwhelming. She was in love with me. I was sure of it. Where had this love come from? I was lost in thought. And do you, Chloe, take this man? The officiant asked, looking at the bride who seemed to be in a daze. Chloe squeezed my hand nervously. I sensed her nervousness and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. I do. You may now kiss the bride. I gently and solemnly kissed Chloe on the forehead. Even though Chloe had planned most of the wedding, I was still exhausted by the end of it. After showering, I lay in our new bed, feeling a wave of nervousness about the night to come. When Chloe came out of the bathroom, her gaze was hot as she looked at me on the bed. I had so many questions for her, but now was clearly not the time. I stammered, the lights. Chloe left a single warm lamp on by the bed and leaned down to kiss her new husband. I don't know how much time had passed when I heard Chloe's soft sobs. No more. I coaxed her softly. Shoo, just one more time. The movement on the bed didn't stop until dawn. I carried Chloe to the bathroom to quickly clean up, and then we both fell asleep. Meanwhile, the three women arrived by private jet, only to find an empty reception hall. They knew they were too late. They immediately drove to the Sterling estate. When they arrived, they were stopped at the gate. The tight security prevented them from getting in, so they had no choice but to wait in their car. Every second felt like an eternity. Time had never passed so slowly. Dawn broke, but the only people who came and went from the estate were the staff. When a member of the kitchen staff left to run errands, the three of them exchanged a look and followed the car. Once out of sight of the main gate, they cut the car off and demanded the staff member let them inside. After a rather unfriendly negotiation, the staff member agreed to let them in. Once inside the estate, they headed for the main house. The moment the staff member was free, they contacted security. An alarm blared across the estate. The alarm woke me up. What's happening? Did someone break in? Go back to sleep. I'll go see what's going on. After Chloe left, I couldn't get back to sleep either, so I got up and got dressed. When I got downstairs, I saw three uninvited guests being restrained by security. What are you doing here? Fiona, Grace, and Bella saw me coming down the stairs and immediately stopped arguing with Chloe. Their eyes immediately fell on the scratch marks on my neck, and a look of sharp pain, like they couldn't breathe, crossed their faces. They turned to glare at Chloe, their eyes filled with a murderous rage. Chloe completely ignored their glares and came to my side. I gestured for her to explain what was going on. They forced a member of the kitchen staff to let them in. Security caught them and treated them as intruders. Oh, let them go. They're like sisters to me. Hearing me say that, Chloe signaled for the guards to release them. Sisters. Hearing me introduce them that way, they forgot their embarrassment for a moment, replaced by a sharp pang in their hearts. The moment they were free, they tried to approach me, but were blocked again. Seeing they were blocked, they stood their ground and pleaded, Ethan, you can't just marry someone out of spite. Come back with us. We won't hold this against you. Just come back with us, and we can pretend none of this ever happened. Their words made Chloe furious, but I raised a hand to stop her before she could speak. I gave my new wife a reassuring glance before turning back to the other three. Fiona, Grace, Bella, don't flatter yourselves. Do you really think I would marry someone just to spite you? How ridiculous. And whether you mind or not is completely irrelevant to me. Who do you think you are to say such things? I must have been far too good to you in the past for you to have such delusions. You're not worthy. With that, I took Chloe to have breakfast. Chloe's face lit up with delight at my harsh words. She waved to the guards. Don't let them ruin my husband's appetite. Ethan, their voices faded as they were escorted out. After breakfast, I looked out at the overcast sky while listening to the head of security report to Chloe that the three of them were still standing outside the gate. Ignore them, I said, then looked at Chloe. You don't have to tell me these things. You know what my relationship with them was. I'm married to you now. That means the past is behind me. Chloe didn't seem embarrassed at all to be caught. Now, let's talk about why you act as if you've known me for a long time. Hearing this, Chloe's smile faltered for a moment. Was she supposed to tell her husband that she'd found his lost student ID in high school and had fallen in love with his photo at first sight? That she fell even deeper when she saw him stand up for a student who was being bullied? Chloe thought for a moment, then decided to confess. We went to the same high school. How come I don't remember you? That was before I was acknowledged by the Sterling family. I transferred after they took me in. No wonder. A sudden clap of thunder made us both jump. A heavy rain began to fall outside. We paid it no mind and continued talking, eager to learn more about each other. The three women outside in the rain seemed to have been forgotten. They stood stubbornly in the downpour, letting the rain drench them to the bone. The rain was heavy, but it couldn't wash away the pain in their hearts. I thought I loved Julian, so why does it hurt so much that Ethan is married? Bella's question left the other two speechless. Looking at their silence, she continued in a small voice, Do you think he'll really never forgive us? Of course he will. Ethan has always had a soft spot for us. When he sees us out here in the rain, he'll come out. That's right. He could never bear to see us suffer. The three of them stood in the rain, lying to themselves, until Fiona's body finally gave out and she collapsed. The other two tried to help her, but they collapsed as well. When Julian finally arrived at the Sterling estate, This was the scene that greeted him. All three of them had collapsed in the rain. He quickly called an ambulance and had them taken to the hospital. This patient just donated a kidney. Her body hasn't recovered, and being out in this storm has given her a dangerously high fever. These other two lost a lot of blood recently. Their systems are weak. The exposure has also given them persistent high fevers. At the hospital, Julian was exhausted, trying to care for all three of them, constantly wiping their foreheads and checking their IVs. Bella and Grace woke up first. Seeing they were in a hospital, they both assumed I had brought them there. Seeing Fiona still unconscious, and feeling their own weakness, the pain seemed to lessen. They heard footsteps outside and stared eagerly at the door, thinking it was me. But the person who walked in was Julian. A look of disappointment crossed both their faces. "Grace, Bella, you're awake?" Julian said, pleasantly surprised. He hadn't heard them murmur my name. "I was so worried about you," he said, walking over to Grace's bed and reaching out to feel her forehead. She flinched away, and Julian's eyes immediately welled with tears. "I'm fine. Go check on Bella," Grace said, not quite sure why she didn't want him to touch her. "I'm fine too. You should check on Fiona," Bella said. Seeing his hurt expression, she found she had no desire to comfort him. "You're being so mean," he pouted, turning away, expecting them to apologize and fuss over him. He waited for a long time, but no one said a word. Feeling something was wrong, he turned back to find them both staring silently at the ceiling, lost in their own thoughts, completely oblivious to his tantrum. Just as he was about to speak, Fiona started to stir. "Fiona, you're finally awake. You won't believe how they..." Fiona had just woken up, and Julian's incessant chatter was giving her a headache. She couldn't help but cut him off. "Be quiet." Julian froze. What was happening? Why were they all treating him this way? Seeing Julian's tears only irritated Fiona. She felt none of her usual pity. Standing outside the Sterling estate yesterday, they had all come to a realization. They were in love with me. That's why they couldn't accept me marrying someone else. Their feelings for Julian were just pity for someone they saw as weak. If they wanted any chance of winning me back, they had to get rid of Julian. Julian looked at their thoughtful expressions and felt a growing sense of unease. He didn't know what to do, so he fell back on his old tactic, playing the victim. "You three are so cruel. I ignored my own health to take care of you, and this is how you treat me when you wake up." Watching Julian cry, Fiona, Grace, and Bella couldn't help but think of me. Ethan would never act like this, making a scene over every little thing. He would just quietly take care of them, his heart aching for their pain. Still, he had taken care of them. Finally, one of them spoke. "Thank you for your trouble. I'll wire you some money. Buy yourself something nice. I'll find you a comfortable job. You should go back home. I'll find an apartment for you. You and your father should move out of the guest house." Hearing this, Julian was so stunned he forgot to cry. "Are you trying to cut ties with me? Ethan is still angry with us. It would be better if you left," Fiona said, her face expressionless. "But he's married now. You don't have to marry him anymore. Why are you doing this? Who said we were being forced? You don't even love him. Shut up. Since when do you have the right to tell us how we feel?" All three of them looked at him with cold indifference. Not since he had first won their sympathy had they ever looked at him with such coldness. He couldn't help but remember when he first arrived at the Sinclairs. They had been just as cold and dismissive to him then. All his years of effort, finally getting them to pity him, to be kind to him, and now it was all gone. He was back where he started. He couldn't accept it. "Ethan is already married," Julian screamed, on the verge of a breakdown. "You ruined his birthday party for me. You refused to marry him. That was just a few days ago. Have you forgotten? He doesn't care about you. If he did, he wouldn't have left you to collapse in the rain without even a second glance." All three of them snapped at once. "Shut up!" Being reminded of their humiliation made them furious. Watching him scream, any last shred of pity they had for him vanished. "Did Ethan say something to you? He's already married, and he's still trying to turn you against me. That bastard!" He screamed insults at me, his victim persona completely gone. Perhaps this was the real him. "If you say one more word, I promise you'll regret it," Fiona said, her voice ice cold. Julian was instantly reminded that these were the heiresses of three of the most powerful families in the country. They may have been gentle and kind to him before, but that didn't mean that's who they really were. He had personally witnessed the three of them sadistically torture someone who had crossed him until the person lost their mind. Julian froze, a cold sweat breaking out on his back. He quickly reverted to his act. "You're not well. You've just woken up. I won't hold it against you. I'll go get the doctor." With that, he quickly fled the room. The moment he was out the door, his face twisted into a dark, sinister snarl. Ethan Sinclair, why don't you just die? Why won't you just die? A passing nurse was startled by his expression, but he quickly composed himself and went to get them some food. If he wanted to maintain his current lifestyle, he had to keep them on his side. After tasting the high life, how could he ever go back to being a nobody? He had it all in his grasp. Ever since I found out about Chloe's feelings for me, I've been trying my best to return her affection. As newlyweds, we were inseparable, and our feelings for each other grew quickly. There was just one thing I was having trouble with. Even though I'd been married 3 times in my past life, my wives had all treated me like I didn't exist. I had never experienced true intimacy. Since marrying Chloe, she wanted to be with me late into the night, every night. One night, Chloe was lying in bed, wearing a sheer nightgown that left little to the imagination. "Honey, I'm wearing that lingerie you like. Come and see." Hearing the pleading tone in her voice, my heart melted. "My love, you don't have to try so hard to please me." Chloe shook her head. "I'm not trying to please you. I'm just physically attracted to you." The next day, we went to a hot spring resort after breakfast. I took a picture of the beautiful scenery and posted it on my Facebook page. The 3 women, scrolling through their phones, saw my post. It was a picture of my hand held tightly in a delicate one as we walked through a grove of trees. You could feel my happiness right through the screen. They immediately sent the photo to their assistants, telling them to find out where I was. As soon as they got the location, they ripped out their IVs, changed their clothes, and headed for the resort. Julian returned just in time to see them leaving in a hurry. He quickly dropped what he was carrying and followed. By the time they reached the resort, several hours had passed. Chloe and I had already finished in the hot springs and were having dinner. "Ethan, you devil. You said you were bringing me here to relax, but then you..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Thinking about what I'd done in the hot spring, her face flushed, and she gave me a playful, smoldering glare. Her look made my heart race, but I knew if I didn't appease her, I might be sleeping on the couch tonight. "My love, I deeply regret my actions. Don't be angry. Here, eat something. You must be exhausted." Pouting, Chloe took a large bite of the steak I offered her, chewing aggressively while glaring at me, as if to vent her frustration. But what she thought was a fierce glare, I found incredibly adorable. My heart melted at her cuteness. I kept feeding her until she couldn't eat another bite, and only then did I start on my own meal. When Fiona, Grace, and Bella found me, they saw me smiling, watching my wife eat, my eyes filled with adoration. The atmosphere between us was so intimate, it felt like there was no room for anyone else in our world. The sight was a dagger to their hearts, leaving them breathless. That look, that affection used to be reserved for them. And now, the restaurant was nearly empty. The 3 of them approached our table, their faces grim. We were so engrossed in our meal that we didn't notice them at first, assuming it was just a waiter. It was only when I realized they had been standing there for an uncomfortably long time that I looked up. The moment I saw them, my smile vanished. "What are you doing here? I thought I made myself clear last time." The sudden shift in my demeanor stung them. Fiona spoke cautiously. "Ethan, we came here to find you. We need to talk. Can we?" Chloe cut in protectively. "What could you possibly have to talk to my husband about?" Even though I had told her I had no feelings for them anymore, she still didn't want me to be alone with them. After all, we had known each other our whole lives, and she knew how soft-hearted I could be. The 3 of them ignored Chloe completely, their eyes fixed on me. Not wanting them to keep harassing us, I agreed to speak with them alone. I gave Chloe a reassuring kiss. After she left, I turned to the 3 women standing there, my expression cold. "Sit, talk." The stark contrast between how I treated them and how I treated Chloe clearly made them uncomfortable. Chloe was outside, bored, kicking at pebbles, when a plain-looking man in a white hoodie approached her, staring at her with wide, pitiful eyes. Thinking she was in his way, Chloe moved aside. Julian saw her move, and for a split second his expression flickered, but he quickly composed himself. "You're Ethan's wife, right?" Chloe looked at the strange man and didn't answer. "I'm the son of the Sinclair's housekeeper. Sir Ethan has a bit of a misunderstanding about me. You see, he's in love with the young ladies from the other families, and they've always been especially kind to me, so he tends to take it out on me." He frowned, looking hurt. "I came to apologize to him. I hope he doesn't do something rash, like get married on an impulse, and regret it for the rest of his life. After all, he really does love those 3. As Julian spun his web of lies, he failed to notice that the woman's expression had shifted from neutral to thunderous. Are male manipulators really this pathetic these days? Unable to listen to any more, Chloe cut him off. Julian was left speechless. I was just trying to keep you from getting hurt. Why are you so ungrateful? The 3 ladies you mentioned, are they the ones currently harassing my husband inside? If they're so special to you, why do you look so pathetic? They've clearly done a poor job of taking care of you. Unlike my husband, who has been glowing ever since he married me. A gutter rat like you isn't even fit to shine his shoes. If I didn't want him to go in and interrupt their little chat, I wouldn't waste my breath on a creep like you. Fine, be ungrateful. But there's no need for insults, he said, turning to leave with a deeply wounded expression. That stubborn bitch. Ethan Sinclair, how dare you be so lucky? You lose 3 heiresses and end up with a woman like her. As he turned, Julian's face contorted into a hateful sneer as he cursed me under his breath, thinking no one could see. But his reflection was perfectly clear in the glass window. Chloe's cold voice came from behind him. Hey, you with the 2 faces. I'd hate to think you were cursing my husband. You really don't want to find out what happens when you get on my bad side. Julian froze. He was about to turn, but then he saw his own snarling reflection in the glass. He could only lower his head and hurry inside. When he entered the restaurant, he saw Fiona, Grace, and Bella in the middle of a heartfelt confession to me. Ethan, I love you. Julian stopped in his tracks, listening silently. After they all said it, they watched me, waiting for my reaction. But I remained expressionless, calmly pouring myself a cup of tea. Ethan, I know I realized my feelings too late. I let Julian poison my mind against you, making me think you were arrogant and spoiled. That was my mistake. We grew up together. I let his pitiful act blind me, and I misjudged you. With that, she took a pearl phone charm from her pocket and held it out to me. Ethan, I know I hurt you. I know you're angry. Look, I remade the pearl charm you threw away. Please don't be angry anymore. Come back with me. We can start over. Ethan, I know I was wrong, too, Grace said as soon as Fiona finished, pulling a gemstone bracelet from her pocket. Look, I replaced the one you threw out with an even more beautiful one. You'll always be my little prince. Please, come back with me. Bella immediately produced a photo frame from her pocket. Inside was the picture of us from my 18th birthday. Ethan, look, I had the photo reprinted. We've known each other our whole lives. No one knows you better than we do. Come back with me, and I'll spoil you just like I used to. All 3 of them stood there, holding out their offerings, waiting for my response. When they were finished, I let out a soft, humorless laugh. I looked Fiona in the eye. Fiona, you know we grew up together, right? For a minute there, I thought it was Julian you grew up with. After all these years, you let a few words from him turn you against me. Don't you find that laughable? I took the pearl charm from her and threw it on the floor. The string broke on impact, sending pearls scattering across the floor. Grace, have you no shame? Remember when the 4 of us went camping? You drove them back in the middle of the night and left me stranded in the wilderness, without a car, not caring if I was terrified. Is that how you treat your little prince? I took the gemstone bracelet and smashed it on the floor. The gemstones shattered, just like any bond we ever had. Sharp fragments flew, cutting into their legs through the fabric of their dresses. And you, Bella, do you remember pushing me for Julian, getting me injured? I truly feel that knowing you all these years has been nothing but bad luck. I took the photo out of the frame and ripped it to shreds. Looking at their crestfallen faces, I spoke coldly. Fiona, Grace, Bella, the best apology you can give me is to never show your faces to me again. Seeing you brings me nothing but misfortune. You ruined my birthday, you humiliated me in front of everyone. So stay out of my life. If you continue to harass me, I won't show any mercy for old time's sake. You're not upset that you lost me. You're just upset that the little puppy who always followed you around has finally stopped. I have nothing more to say. With that, I turned and left the restaurant without a backward glance. As I passed the entrance, I saw Julian standing there and shot him a look of utter contempt. My expression made Julian's composure shatter. That arrogant look again. When he first enrolled in the elite prep school on the Sinclair's dime, all the other rich kids looked down on him. I was never unkind to him, but he wanted what I had. He wanted to be admired, not mocked for being some poor charity case polluting their clean air. That's why he did everything he could to take what was mine. Slowly, as he grew closer to the 3 heiresses, the other students started to treat him with respect. But I always looked at him with that same condescending pity, as if he were a clown. My very existence was a constant reminder that everything he had clawed and scraped for was my birthright. He hated me for it. The 3 women stood frozen where I had left them, staring at the scattered pearls, the gemstone shards in their legs, and the torn photograph on the floor. No one spoke. I had refused them. I had called them bad luck. My words had been a knife in their hearts, twisting and turning until they were left raw and bleeding. All three of them were in agony. None of them moved. They just stood there, heads bowed, silent tears streaming down their faces. Their tears fell to the floor, forming a small puddle at their feet. After what felt like an eternity, Fiona raised her head, wiped her tears, and said in a determined voice, "Ethan, I won't give up. I will earn your forgiveness." As if spurred on by her words, Grace added, "I don't believe you can just throw away all those years we spent together so easily." Bella chimed in, "He's just hurt. That's why he said those things. It will take more than one try to win him back." They said the words, but in their hearts, they couldn't help but ask themselves, will it work? Has he really moved on so quickly? Was he really just lashing out in pain? The three of them finally stood, moving their stiff legs, and left the restaurant together, completely ignoring Julian, who was still standing nearby. Ignored, Julian watched them leave, his heart burning with rage. He remembered the first time they had looked at him with kindness. It was after he had saved them from a mugging. Of course, he had hired the muggers himself, but the result was what mattered, wasn't it? They had accepted him. His life at school had gotten easier. His life at the Sinclairs had gotten better. His father had even gotten a raise. He had learned from a young age that you had to be ruthless to get what you wanted. He took out his phone, sent a text, and began to laugh, a strange, unhinged sound. As soon as I stepped out of the restaurant, I saw Chloe staring at me, her face a mask of unhappiness. I quickly walked over and pulled her into my arms. The hug seemed to dispel her anger, but she still said in a cool voice, "So you do remember you have a wife waiting for you outside. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me in there." I knew she wasn't really angry, and I was more than happy to play along. "My love, let's go home." I put my arm around her waist and led her happily to the car. The next day, Chloe's legs were so weak she spent the entire day in bed. And I, in turn, played the part of the doting, apologetic husband, massaging her shoulders and feeding her, all while refusing to promise any restraint in the future. I don't know what other women are like, but this woman was going to be the death of me. Julian followed the three women back to the hospital. Seeing them back in their beds, he smiled and entered the room. "Fiona, Grace, Bella, I brought you dinner. I hope you like it." His cheerful voice got no reaction from them. Julian stiffened for a moment, but quickly hid it. Even though no one acknowledged him, he continued setting out the food. When he was done, he went to each of them, trying to get them to eat. Having not eaten all day, the three of them finally got up to eat. Julian served them like an attendant. After they finished, they watched him bustling about and all thought the same thing. If only it were Ethan. When Julian was finished, one of them spoke. "Thank you for all your trouble lately. What do you want? We'll give you anything." Julian knew exactly what they were saying. They were cutting him off. In that case, he wouldn't hold back. His heart was filled with resentment, but his face was a mask of pitiful sorrow, his eyes welling with tears as he looked at them. "Is that what you think of me? That I only took care of you because I wanted something?" The three of them just watched him silently. His tears, which had once been so effective, now seemed to have no effect at all. He wiped his tears, pretending to be strong. "I understand. I don't want anything, but can you go on one last outing with me tomorrow?" He looked utterly heartbroken, lowering his head and clutching his chest. After a long moment, he looked up, as a farewell. "Please." Bella, moved by his plea, was the first to agree. "Okay." Fiona and Grace had been hesitating, but hearing Bella agree, they exchanged a look and nodded as well. The next day was bright and sunny, perfect weather for an outing. Julian was dressed in a white hoodie and a baseball cap, his hair perfectly styled. The three women were all dressed casually. Julian was displeased with their casual attire, but thinking of what was to come, he decided not to make an issue of it. The four of them set off. Julian did most of the talking on the way. Bella would occasionally chime in, but the other two were silent. No matter how hard Julian tried to lift their spirits, they remained withdrawn. Eventually, he fell silent too. He thought back to how their outings used to be, and the stark contrast to the current mood made it difficult for him to keep the pleasant look on his face. But the three women were so lost in their own thoughts that they didn't notice the occasional flicker of resentment that twisted his features. When they arrived at their destination, Julian purposefully led them toward a busy intersection. Once there, he scanned the street until he spotted a familiar license plate, then he led them forward. "Fiona, Grace, Bella, I heard there's a really great restaurant just up ahead. Let me treat you to one last meal, to thank you for taking care of me all these years." The three women, already tired of the outing, readily agreed. Julian walked ahead, and as they followed, they failed to notice the traffic light change. It all happened in an instant. Julian turned back as if to check on them. Then his eyes widened in mock terror and he screamed, "Look out!" With a sickening thud, Julian shoved the three of them out of the way just as a car slammed into him, sending him flying. The three women, knocked to the ground, were initially annoyed at being pushed, but when they looked up, they saw Julian lying in a pool of his own blood. Julian, Fiona, Grace, and Bella screamed in horror. Fiona was the first to react, immediately calling for an ambulance while the other two carefully cradled his body. "Julian, how are you feeling? Julian, you?" Inwardly, Julian was cursing the driver for hitting him too hard, but hearing them call his name with such concern, he knew his plan had worked. He forced a pained, beautiful smile and whispered, his voice barely audible, "As long as you're all safe." With that, his eyes fluttered shut and he passed out. Waiting outside the emergency room, Grace and Bella were a nervous wreck. They had been ready to cut ties with Julian, but now he had been so badly injured saving them. "Grace, Bella, you won't believe what I just saw on the security footage," Fiona said, returning from speaking with the police, her face pale with disbelief. "What is it?" they both asked, looking up at her. "This wasn't an accident. It was planned." "Who would do that?" "It was." The image of Julian lying in a pool of blood flashed through their minds, and any lingering resentment they felt towards him vanished, replaced by a wave of guilt and pity. "The driver fled the scene. They haven't found him yet, but my security team found his phone. There was a text message on it, sent to Ethan. See for yourselves." They stared at the familiar number on the screen. "Don't worry, Mr. Sinclair. The job will be done. Haven't forgotten our agreement." "It was Ethan," Fiona whispered, stunned, unable to say anything else. "Impossible. It has to be fake," Bella cried, throwing the phone as if she could make the truth disappear by not looking at it. "I don't believe it either," Grace said, her voice trembling. "That's why I'm going to ask him myself. Are you coming with me? Let's go." Just as they were about to leave to find me, the doors to the operating room opened, and Julian was wheeled out. "He's stable," the doctor said. "He just needs to rest and recover." The three of them looked down at Julian, pale and still on the gurney, their eyes filled with pity. As if the anesthesia was wearing off, Julian's eyes slowly fluttered open. Seeing the three of them gathered around him, a faint smile touched his lips, his eyes curving into crescents. "Good, you're all okay." His words struck a chord deep within them. Even in his condition, he was still thinking of them. Their resolve to get justice for him hardened. "Julian, you just rest. We found something at the scene, something that links Ethan to the accident. We're gonna go ask him what happened. We think he might have planned it." Hearing this, Julian's eyes widened in feigned disbelief. "But why would Sir Ethan do that to us?" "You just rest. We'll be back." Julian nodded weakly. "Please be careful. Don't get hurt. I'd worry." He lowered his eyes, as if embarrassed. The three of them patted his head gently and left. The moment they were gone, Julian's eyes snapped open, a cold, triumphant smirk spreading across his face as he stared at the closed door. "Fiona, Grace, Bella, go turn on your precious Ethan. Become his bitter enemies. With any luck, you'll never speak to him again, and my position will finally be secure." He pulled out a hidden phone and sent a text to the driver, telling him to lay low and not get caught. The thought of the four of them tearing each other apart filled him with such glee that even the pain from his injuries seemed to fade. Meanwhile, the three women arrived back at the Sterling estate, only to be stopped at the gate once again. This time, they didn't just wait. They called me relentlessly from burner phones and even threatened to ram the gate. Utterly fed up, I finally went out to meet them. Of course, Chloe and a team of security guards were right by my side. They looked completely unhinged, and Chloe was worried for my safety. The moment I appeared, Fiona demanded, "Ethan, do you really hate us that much?" I was completely baffled. I had no idea what she was talking about. "We made one mistake, and you're willing to throw away all our years of history and have us killed?" Grace's voice broke, the thought that I could have arranged the accident making it hard for her to breathe. "Ethan, we're so disappointed in you," Bella said, her face a mask of sorrow. I hadn't said a word, and already they were accusing me of attempted murder. "Didn't I tell you to stay away from me? What are you barking about now? Julian is lying in a hospital bed, and you can say something so heartless? Ethan, we can forgive you for trying to hurt us, but you hurt Julian. You have to go and..." After listening to their accusations for a while, I finally understood what this was about. I truly believe the three of them are complete and utter fools. "Are you brainless? Can't you see you're being framed? Chloe, can you find that driver?" Chloe nodded and immediately dispatched her team to track him down. After speaking to Chloe, I turned back to the three of them. I wanted nothing more to do with you or Julian. Yes, he's a manipulative liar, but the real problem is that you three are gullible enough to believe his every word. I took out my phone, unblocked their numbers, created a new group chat, and sent them a few files. Then I left the group and blocked them again. Take a good look at what your precious Julian has been up to. As their phones buzzed with notifications, they opened the files, their faces growing paler with each second. It was all security footage from my family's estate. The videos showed Julian, time and again, accidentally hurting himself in front of me the moment he knew they were watching, then whispering misleading things to them after they rushed to his side. And just like clockwork, they would turn on me, accusing me without listening to a word of my defense, all to protect him. The footage was crystal clear. It was all deliberate. The last video showed the muggers from years ago, the ones who had attacked them, bowing subserviently to Julian. It was obvious they knew each other well. Their entire relationship with him had been built on a lie. While they were still reeling from the shock, Chloe's team reported in. Let's go. I'll take you to see the driver. The three of them, completely dazed, followed us into the car. When we arrived, the driver was thrown at their feet, where he immediately began begging for mercy. I was desperate. I listened to him because I needed to pay off my gambling debts. Fiona pulled up a photo of Julian on her phone and showed it to the driver. The driver took one look and confirmed, "That's him." He then produced the burner phone he had used to communicate with Julian, showing them the entire plan. They stared at the screen, reading Julian's vicious plans and his cruel mockery of their gullibility. Humiliated and furious at being played for fools, they took their anger out on the driver before turning to look at me, who had been watching the whole pathetic display. They couldn't meet my eyes. "We're sorry." For the first time, they gave me a sincere apology. They promised never to bother me again, and then they left. I watched them go, thinking to myself, as long as they remain in their positions of power, they will continue to be a source of trouble in my life. I took out my phone and sent the videos and recordings to the heads of their respective families. I left the rest to my parents. They would know how to handle it from there. When the three of them returned to the hospital, they found Julian sleeping peacefully in his bed. They looked at him with faces like thunder. They called their security details and had him moved to a secluded villa they had recently purchased. They had bought it for their own use, but now it had a new purpose. Julian, dragged from his hospital bed, had no idea what was happening. He was woken by rough hands. Before he could scream, his mouth was gagged and a hood was pulled over his head. When the hood was finally removed, he found himself in a basement, facing the three familiar women sitting on chairs before him. Fiona, Grace, Bella, what's happening? He had just saved their lives. Shouldn't they be treating him like a hero? What was this? Could they have found out? No, it was too soon. Julian, watch this before you say another word. One of them gestured for a guard to bring in a monitor. It began to play the videos I had sent them, along with the driver's confession. After watching it all, Julian knew it was useless to deny anything. His only recourse was to cry and beg for their pity. But his tears had no effect on them anymore. No amount of crocodile tears could hide his venomous nature. Julian, you love getting these little injuries to win our sympathy, don't you? Well, from now on, you'll get to experience them over and over again. Are you happy? We're just satisfying your little fetish. And you love living in a nice house, don't you? Good. You'll be living in this one for the rest of your life. Hearing their malicious words and seeing the sick smiles on their faces, Julian felt true fear for the first time. He should never have crossed them. Please, let me go. I'll never bother you again. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Snot and tears streamed down his face. He was no longer concerned with making his crying look appealing. He liked nice houses, but he could only imagine the living hell his life in this one would become. The three women left without a backward glance, not caring whether his pleas were genuine or just another lie. It didn't matter. He would never leave that house again. Exhausted, body and soul, the three women flew back to their home city. They didn't dare to face me again. The damage they had done was too great. But as soon as they returned home, they were met with a devastating blow. They had been disinherited and formally disowned by their families. Their families had them committed to a long-term care facility, a place far less comfortable than the prison they had made for Julian. Having lost the alliance with my family, their own families had given up on them and chosen new heirs. Having lost everything, the shock was too much for them to bear. They collapsed, falling into comas. While in their comas, all three of them experienced the same dream. They watched my entire previous life unfold from a third-person perspective. When they woke up 2 months later, they were like empty shells. Any thoughts they had of begging their families for forgiveness were gone. They seemed to have aged a decade overnight, their hair turning completely white. After a year in the facility, on an ordinary afternoon, the three of them wrote a final letter of apology to me, then hanged themselves in the bathroom with their bedsheets. By the time the staff found them, it was too late. The letter of apology never reached me. It was thrown away as trash by a janitor who couldn't read. By the time I heard the news of their deaths, they had already been buried. I never saw them again after that day. To me, they were just strangers. I interrupted the person on the other end of the line to share some good news. "Mom, my wife is pregnant." My mother's attention was immediately captured by the news of her grandchild. She and my father began making plans to clear their schedules and come to Chicago to visit. After we arranged a time, I hung up the phone, let out a breath, and put the news of their deaths out of my mind. Just then, I heard Chloe's voice from the kitchen. "Honey, come and try this new dish I learned to make."